The alarm shrieked through the medical bay as Dr. Marcus Chun rushed toward the emergency dock. His surgical gloves were already on, his mind racing through trauma protocols he'd performed countless times aboard the deep space research vessel Meridian. The ship had been exploring the Outer Rim territories for 18 months now, cataloging new species and establishing first contact protocols. This was supposed to be routine. "What do we have?" Marcus called out as the airlock cycled open with a sharp hiss. Lieutenant Sarah Kim emerged first, her face grim behind her helmet visor. "Found her drifting in an escape pod about 2 clicks from that debris field we've been studying. Pod's power was almost gone. She's been out there for days, maybe weeks." Behind her came 2 other crew members carrying a stretcher. Marcus caught his first glimpse of their patient and felt his breath catch. The being on the stretcher was humanoid, but clearly alien. Her skin had a pale blue-gray tint, and intricate silver markings traced along her visible arms and neck like natural tattoos. Her hair was white as starlight, matted with what appeared to be dried blood. Most striking were her ears, elongated and pointed, giving her an almost mythical appearance. "Vital signs are weak, but stable," reported Ensign Torres, jogging alongside the stretcher. "Her body temperature is significantly lower than human normal, but that seems consistent with her physiology. Multiple lacerations, possible internal bleeding, and signs of severe dehydration." Marcus nodded, his training taking over. "Get her to surgical bay, too. I want a full bioscan and begin preparing for emergency surgery. And somebody find Dr. Voss. I need a xenobiologist in there with me." As they rushed through the corridors of the Meridian, Marcus studied their patient more closely. Her breathing was shallow, but rhythmic, and despite her obvious injuries, there was something almost peaceful about her unconscious state. The silver markings on her skin seemed to shimmer faintly in the corridor lighting, creating an almost hypnotic pattern. "Sir," Torres said quietly as they reached the surgical bay, "there's something else you should know. Her escape pod wasn't like anything in our databases. The technology is completely foreign, but it's also incredibly advanced. Our engineers are saying it makes our best ships look primitive." Marcus filed that information away as they transferred their patient to the surgical table. The bioscanners immediately began their work, painting holographic displays of her internal structure in the air above the table. What they revealed was both fascinating and troubling. "Her bone density is 40% higher than human normal," Dr. Voss announced as she entered the bay, pulling on her sterile gear. "Muscle fiber composition is unlike anything I've seen. And these neural pathways." She paused, studying the scans. "Marcus, her brain activity is off the charts. Even unconscious, she's showing cognitive patterns that are incredibly complex. Can we treat her safely?" Marcus asked, already beginning to clean and examine the wounds. The lacerations were deep, but clean, as if caused by some kind of energy weapon rather than debris. "Her biochemistry is surprisingly compatible with human medicine. I think we can use standard coagulants and antibiotics, but we'll need to adjust the dosages. Start with 30% of human normal and work up if needed." For the next 6 hours, Marcus worked with steady hands and focused mind. The injuries were severe, but treatable. As he sutured the deeper wounds, he noticed something odd about her blood. It had a faint luminescent quality, glowing very softly under the surgical lights. When he mentioned this to Dr. Voss, she just shook her head in amazement. "I'm documenting everything, but honestly, Marcus, this is unprecedented. Her entire physiology seems designed for efficiency and endurance. Her heart rate is slower than human normal, but each beat pumps nearly twice the volume. Her lung capacity is enormous. And these markings on her skin aren't just decorative. They seem to be some kind of sensory organ." As the hours passed and their patient's vital signs stabilized, Marcus found himself increasingly curious about who she was and where she'd come from. The escape pod had been found near a debris field that their long-range sensors had identified as the remains of a massive vessel. The destruction had been complete. Whatever had happened there, it had been catastrophic. Any luck with translation protocols? He asked Dr. Voss as they finished the last of the surgical work. The linguistics team is working on it. Her pod had some kind of automated distress beacon, but the signal encoding is completely alien. They think they might be able to crack it given time, but it's going to take days at least. Marcus cleaned up the surgical site and checked their patient's bandages one final time. She looked peaceful now, her breathing deep and steady. The silver markings on her skin had grown brighter during the surgery, pulsing gently in rhythm with her heartbeat. It was beautiful and alien and somehow deeply moving. "I'll stay with her tonight," Marcus said quietly. "Someone should monitor her recovery, and I want to be here when she wakes up." Dr. Voss nodded. "I'll have the overnight nursing staff check in every hour. Her neural activity suggests she might regain consciousness within the next 12 to 24 hours. As the surgical bay emptied and the ship settled into its night cycle, Marcus pulled up a chair beside the recovery bed. He reviewed her chart on his tablet, making notes about her unusual physiology and the successful surgery. Outside the bay's viewport, stars wheeled slowly past as the Meridian continued its journey through unexplored space. Around midnight ship's time, Marcus noticed a change in his patient's breathing pattern. It was becoming deeper, more regular. The silver markings on her skin were pulsing more rapidly now, and he could see rapid eye movement beneath her closed lids. "Fascinating," he murmured, making notes on his tablet. "Her recovery rate is remarkable. What would take a human weeks seems to be happening in hours." He was so absorbed in his observations that he almost missed the moment when her eyes opened. They were unlike any eyes he'd ever seen, a deep violet color that seemed to hold flecks of silver. For a moment, she stared at the ceiling with what appeared to be confusion. Then her gaze found his, and Marcus felt a jolt of recognition that made no logical sense. "Easy," he said softly, raising his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "You're safe. You're aboard a human vessel called the Meridian. I'm Dr. Marcus Chen. I performed surgery on your injuries." She blinked slowly, and Marcus could see intelligence and calculation in her expression. Her lips moved, but no sound emerged at first. Then, in a voice that was melodic despite its weakness, she spoke. "Human," she said, and Marcus was shocked to realize he understood her perfectly. "You helped me?" "Yes," he replied, leaning forward slightly. "We found you drifting in an escape pod. You were badly injured. How do you feel?" She attempted to sit up, wincing at the movement. Marcus moved to help her, adjusting the bed's position to make her more comfortable. As he did so, he noticed that the silver markings on her skin were now glowing more brightly, especially where his hands briefly touched her arms. "I feel strange," she said slowly, as if searching for words. "The pain is less, but there's something else. Something different." "That's normal after surgery," Marcus assured her. "You lost a lot of blood, and your body is still healing. Can you tell me your name?" She was quiet for a long moment, her violet eyes studying his face with an intensity that was almost unnerving. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that seemed far heavier than her apparent injuries. "My name is Lyra Valderis," she said, "and I'm not supposed to be here." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked gently. "Where are you supposed to be?" "Dead," she replied simply. "I'm supposed to be dead, along with everyone else on my ship." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. "What happened to your ship?" Lyra's eyes grew distant, and Marcus could see pain there that had nothing to do with her physical injuries. "We were betrayed," she said quietly, "by someone we trusted, someone we never should have trusted." "Can you tell me more?" "We found debris from what appeared to be a massive vessel." "Was that your ship?" She nodded slowly. "The Star Weaver, a deep space exploration vessel, much like yours. We were—" She paused, seeming to struggle with something. "We were returning home from a long mission when we encountered a distress signal. It appeared to be from one of our own ships. But it wasn't. No, it was a trap. When we moved to render assistance, we were attacked. Our shields failed almost immediately. The attackers knew our defensive frequencies, our weak points. They knew everything. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. How many were on your ship? 437 souls, Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. Scientists, explorers, families, all dead because I failed to see the truth. You couldn't have known it was a trap, Marcus said, trying to offer comfort. Anyone would have responded to a distress signal. Lyra turned those violet eyes on him again, and this time Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. No, Dr. Chun, you don't understand. The trap wasn't just set by strangers. It was set by humans. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. That's impossible. Humans have never been in this sector of space. We're the first human vessel to explore this region. Are you? Lyra asked quietly. Are you really? Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red emergency lights bathed the medical bay in crimson, and Marcus's communicator crackled to life. All hands to battle stations, came Captain Rodriguez's voice over the ship's comm system. We have multiple vessels approaching on an intercept course. Unknown configuration, but definitely hostile. This is not a drill. Marcus looked at Lyra, whose pale face had gone even whiter. The silver markings on her skin were now pulsing rapidly, almost frantically. Doctor, she said, struggling to sit up further despite her injuries. Those ships that are approaching. Can you tell me what they look like? Marcus activated the medical bay's tactical display, which showed a simplified version of what the bridge crew was seeing. 3 vessels were approaching the meridian at high speed, their configurations unlike anything in human databases. They're sleek, almost organic-looking, Marcus said, studying the display. Long and curved with what appears to be some kind of energy field surrounding them. Lyra closed her eyes, and Marcus saw a single tear slide down her cheek. Those are Hegemony ships, she whispered. They've found me. Hegemony. The ones who destroyed my ship. The ones who are allied with your people. That's impossible, Marcus said again. But even as the words left his mouth, he felt doubt creeping in. Humans wouldn't. Dr. Chun, Lyra said, her voice gaining strength. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your ship is in terrible danger, and not just from those vessels approaching. The betrayal runs deeper than you know. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, his communicator buzzed again. This time it was Dr. Voss. Marcus, you need to get down to the engine room immediately. We've detected some kind of sabotage. Someone has been transmitting our position and course to unknown parties. Captain Rodriguez wants all senior staff to report immediately. Marcus felt the world spinning around him. He looked at Lyra, whose violet eyes held a sadness that seemed ancient. It's starting again, she said softly. The same pattern that doomed my ship. Dr. Chun, if you want to save your crew, you must not trust anyone who knew about my rescue. The ship shuddered as weapons fire impacted their shields, and Marcus realized that everything he thought he knew about their mission was about to change forever. In trying to save one life, he might have doomed everyone aboard the Meridian. The medical bay's lights flickered as another impact rocked the ship, and Marcus found himself staring into the eyes of an alien woman who might be the key to saving his crew or the instrument of their destruction. Either way, there was no going back now. The Meridian shook violently under another barrage of weapons fire as Marcus helped Lyra from the medical bed. Despite her injuries, she moved with a fluid grace that spoke of enhanced reflexes and physical capabilities far beyond human norms. We have maybe 10 minutes before they breach your shields, Lyra said, her violet eyes scanning the medical bay's equipment. The hegemony doesn't take prisoners, and they don't leave witnesses. I still don't understand how humans could be involved in this, Marcus said, grabbing a portable medical kit from the wall cabinet. If they were going to move, he wanted to be prepared. Earth's first deep space vessels only launched 5 years ago. Lyra paused in her movements, turning to face him with an expression of profound sadness. Dr. Chun, how long do you think humans have really been traveling in space? Before Marcus could answer, the medical bay doors slid open and Lieutenant Kim rushed in, her face flushed with urgency and fear. Dr. Chun, the captain needs you on the bridge immediately. We got wounded coming in from the engine room, and she stopped mid-sentence as her eyes fell on Lyra. Lieutenant, Marcus said carefully, watching Kim's reaction. This is Lyra Valdris. She's the survivor we rescued. Kim's expression changed in a way that made Marcus's blood run cold. For just a fraction of a second, he saw something that looked like recognition flash across her features before her face settled back into professional concern. Of course, Kim said smoothly. The alien survivor. I'm glad to see she's recovered so quickly. Are her injuries completely healed? Marcus felt Lyra tense beside him. The silver markings on her skin had begun to pulse more rapidly, and he noticed her hand had moved to rest on what looked like an empty weapons holster on her hip. The injuries are stable, Marcus replied, not taking his eyes off Kim. Lieutenant, when exactly did you report finding the escape pod to the rest of the crew? What do you mean? Kim asked, but Marcus caught the slight hesitation in her voice. I mean, who else knew about the rescue besides the medical team? Kim's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward her sidearm. It was a movement so subtle that most people would have missed it, but Marcus had spent enough time in trauma surgery to notice small details that could mean the difference between life and death. Dr. Chun, Lyra said quietly, we need to leave. Now, Lieutenant Kim, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. I'm going to need you to step away from the door. I'm afraid I can't do that, Doctor, Kim replied, and now her weapon was in her hand, though not yet pointed at them. You see, Ms. Valdris here is a very dangerous individual. She's a terrorist responsible for the destruction of her own ship. That's a lie, Lyra said, her voice carrying an edge of steel. But it's the same lie they told about my crew before they murdered them. Is it? Kim asked, her gun now leveled at Lyra. Tell me, Dr. Chun, did she mention that she's not just any alien? She's ethereal nobility. Her people have been at war with the hegemony for over a century. The humans she claims are allied with the hegemony? We're trying to broker peace. Marcus felt the world shifting beneath his feet again. What are you talking about? What's the hegemony? We're ethereals. Species you've never heard of because your government doesn't want you to know, Kim said, her eyes never leaving Lyra. Humanity made contact with alien civilizations over 50 years ago, Dr. Chun. But it's been kept classified. The general population, even most of the space fleet, has no idea. And you do? Marcus asked, though he was beginning to suspect he already knew the answer. I'm part of Joint Task Force, Kim said. Human and hegemony personnel working together to end the ethereal threat. They're a warrior race, Dr. Chun. Beautiful, seductive, and utterly ruthless. They've been expanding across the galaxy for millennia, conquering and enslaving other species. Marcus looked at Lyra, whose face had gone pale with what appeared to be genuine shock and pain. Is any of that true? The ethereals are indeed ancient, Lyra said slowly. And, yes, we are warriors when we must be. But we are not conquerors. We are explorers, scientists, artists. We fight only to defend ourselves and others who cannot defend themselves. Pretty words, Kim said with a bitter laugh. The same pretty words your people used when they destroyed 3 hegemony colony worlds last year. 40 million civilians, Dr. Chun. Women, children, families. I was not part of any such action, Lyra said firmly. My ship was on a deep space research mission. We were studying ancient ruins in the Veil Nebula, searching for clues about the original inhabitants of this galaxy. Convenient story, Kim replied, and impossible to verify, since your ship is now space debris. The ship shuddered again under enemy fire, and Marcus heard Captain Rodriguez's voice over the comm system. All hands, prepare for boarding action. Multiple breaches detected on decks 7 and 9. Security teams to defensive positions. They're already inside, Lyra said grimly. Kim, or whoever you really are, Your hegemony allies are about to demonstrate exactly what they think of human life. What do you mean? Kim asked, though Marcus noticed her confidence seemed to waver for the first time. The hegemony doesn't make alliances, Lyra explained. They make temporary agreements with useful species until those species are no longer useful. Then, they eliminate them. As if to punctuate her words, the sound of weapons fire began echoing through the ship's corridors, followed by screams that made Marcus's stomach clench. That's impossible, Kim said, but her voice lacked conviction. We have an agreement. Humans provide intelligence on ethereal movements, and the hegemony provides us with advanced technology. And when humans are no longer useful? Lyra asked softly. What happens then? Marcus's communicator crackled to life. It was Dr. Voss, and her voice was filled with terror. Marcus, where are you? They're killing everyone they find. These aren't arrests or captures. It's slaughter. The captain is dead. Most of the bridge crew is dead. They're not taking prisoners at all. Kim's face went white. That's not possible. We were told they were coming to extract the ethereal prisoner for interrogation. No, Lyra said sadly. They came to eliminate witnesses. Everyone who saw me. Everyone who might have learned something they shouldn't have. Including you, Kim. The medical bay doors slid open again, and Marcus felt his heart stop. 3 figures in form-fitting armor strode into the room, their faces hidden behind reflective helmets. The armor was sleek and organic-looking, matching the design of the ships that had attacked them. Most disturbing of all, one of the figures was clearly human. Agent Kim, the human figure said in a voice that was cold and mechanical. Your mission is complete. Thank you for your service to the hegemony. Wait, Kim said, raising her hands. I'm supposed to be extracted with the prisoner. That was the agreement. Plans have changed, the figure replied, and Marcus saw the weapon in its hand. Loose ends must be eliminated. The shot was quick and efficient. Kim collapsed to the floor, her eyes wide with shock and betrayal. As she fell, Marcus saw that the energy weapon had left no blood, no visible wound. She was simply dead. Dr. Chun, one of the armored figures said, its voice carrying an odd harmonic quality that suggested it wasn't human. Step away from the ethereal terrorist. She's not a terrorist, Marcus said, moving protectively in front of Lyra despite the weapons trained on them. She's a patient, and I'm her doctor. The figure that had spoken tilted its head in a gesture that somehow conveyed amusement. How wonderfully primitive. You still believe in concepts like medical ethics and patient protection. Some concepts are worth believing in, Marcus replied, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. Indeed, the figure agreed, which is why you'll be permitted to watch while we complete our mission. What mission? Marcus demanded. The elimination of the last witness to humanity's greatest failure. Lyra stepped forward, her injuries apparently forgotten. The silver markings on her skin were now blazing with light, and Marcus could feel heat radiating from her body. You want to know what really happened to my ship? She said, her voice carrying a power that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Dr. Chun, I think it's time you learn the truth about your species. The truth, she continued, her eyes fixed on the armored figures, is that humanity made first contact with my people over 60 years ago. It was a peaceful encounter. My grandfather was part of the diplomatic mission that welcomed humans into galactic civilization. The lead figure raised its weapon, but Lyra continued speaking, seemingly oblivious to the threat. For 40 years, humans and ethereals worked together. We shared technology, culture, science. Your people learned faster than any species we had ever encountered. You adapted our technology, improved upon it, created wonders we had never imagined. Touching, the figure said, but irrelevant. Is it? Lyra asked, because what happened next was that a faction of humans decided they didn't want to be junior partners in galactic civilization. They wanted to be the dominant species. So they made a deal with the hegemony. Marcus felt sick as pieces began falling into place. What kind of deal? A simple one, Lyra said, her voice heavy with sorrow. Help the hegemony destroy the ethereal civilization, and they would share galactic dominance with humanity. The problem was, most humans refused to participate in genocide. So they eliminated the humans who refused, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. Not all of them. Some were simply kept ignorant, given false histories, false records, told that humanity was just beginning to explore space. The Earth, Dr. Chun, is a reservation. Your people have been living in a carefully maintained illusion while the real human civilization wages war alongside the hegemony. The armored figure that had killed Kim stepped forward. When it spoke, Marcus was horrified to recognize the voice of Captain Rodriguez. Very good, Dr. Chun. You're beginning to understand. The question is, what are you going to do with that understanding? Rodriguez. Marcus stared at the figure in shock. You're supposed to be dead. Captain Miguel Rodriguez died 6 months ago when he discovered the truth about our mission, the figure replied. I have been using his identity since then. The hegemony finds human covers quite useful for operations like this. Operations like what? Hunting down the last free ethereals. You see, Dr. Chun, the war is almost over. The ethereal homeworld fell 3 months ago. Their colonies have been systematically destroyed. Ms. Valdres here represents one of the last surviving members of her species. Lyra's light was growing brighter, and Marcus could see her preparing for something. How many? She asked quietly. How many what? How many of my people are left? The false Rodriguez seemed to consider the question. Perhaps a dozen. Maybe fewer. You should be honored. You're witnessing the end of a million-year civilization. That's when Lyra exploded into action. The silver markings on her skin blazed like miniature stars as she moved faster than Marcus thought possible. Her first strike caught the nearest armored figure in the throat, and whatever technology powered their armor apparently couldn't withstand the force of her blow. The figure crumpled like paper. The second figure managed to get shot off, but Lyra's enhanced reflexes carried her out of the beam's path. She spun and delivered a kick that sent the figure flying across the medical bay to crash into the wall with a sound like breaking bones. The false Rodriguez was faster than his companions, managing to backpedal and keep his weapon trained on her. But instead of firing at Lyra, he aimed at Marcus. Stop, he commanded, or the doctor dies. Lyra froze, her eyes locked on the weapon pointed at Marcus. Let him go. Your quarrel is with me. Actually, the false Rodriguez said with what sounded like genuine amusement. Our quarrel is with anyone who might spread inconvenient truths about human history. Dr. Chun has learned far too much to be allowed to live. But he could be useful, Lyra said quickly. A human doctor who knows the truth? Surely the hegemony could find a use for someone like that. Perhaps, the figure agreed. But that would require him to cooperate. Tell me, Dr. Chun, having learned the truth about your species' glorious alliance with the hegemony, are you prepared to serve? Marcus looked at Lyra, at the alien woman he had worked so hard to save, and realized that his answer would determine not just his own fate, but potentially the fate of every human who still believed in things like honor, compassion, and truth. No, he said quietly. I'm not. Pity, the false Rodriguez replied, and Marcus saw the weapon begin to charge for firing. That's when the lights went out, and everything changed again. In the absolute darkness that followed the power failure, Marcus heard sounds that defied explanation. The whisper of movement that was impossibly fast, the sharp crack of impact, and something that might have been the false Rodriguez screaming before the sound cut off abruptly. Emergency lighting flickered on a moment later, casting eerie red shadows throughout the medical bay. Marcus found himself pressed against the wall, Lyra's hand on his shoulder in what was clearly a protective gesture. Where the false Rodriguez had been standing, there was now only empty space and scorch marks on the floor. What happened? Marcus whispered, his heart hammering in his chest. Help arrived, Lyra replied, but her voice carried a mixture of relief and concern that Marcus couldn't quite understand. That's when he saw them. 3 figures stood in the doorway of the medical bay, and Marcus's first impression was that he was looking at angels of death. They wore no armor, but their bodies seemed to shimmer with the same silver markings that adorned Lyra's skin. Their hair was white as starlight, their eyes the same haunting violet. But where Lyra's markings pulsed gently, theirs blazed with an intensity that made Marcus want to shield his eyes. Lyra Valderus, the center figure said in a voice that carried harmonics no human throat could produce. We had feared you were lost. Kale Starweaver, Lyra replied, and Marcus heard emotion in her voice that hadn't been there before. I thought I was the only one left. The figure called Kale moved forward with that same impossible grace Marcus had noticed in Lyra. As he approached, Marcus could see that his face was angular and beautiful in a way that was utterly alien, with cheekbones that caught the light like carved crystal. You nearly were, Kale said grimly. The hegemony has been very thorough. We've been tracking their operations for months, following the trail of destroyed ships and eliminated witnesses. How many of us remain? Lyra asked, and Marcus heard the weight of terrible anticipation in her question. 17. Another of the newcomers replied. This one was female, with markings that seemed to flow like liquid silver across her skin. 17 out of a population of 2 billion. The numbers hit Marcus like a physical blow. An entire civilization reduced to 17 survivors. He looked at Lyra with new understanding of the grief he had seen in her eyes. Dr. Chun, Kale said, turning his attention to Marcus. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You saved one of the last of our kind when you could have simply let her die. I'm a doctor, Marcus said quietly. It's what I do. No, the female ethereal said firmly. It's who you are. There is a difference, and it's a difference that may save both our species. I don't understand, Marcus replied. Your people are virtually extinct. My people have apparently been complicit in genocide. What's left to save? Kale and his companions exchanged glances that seemed to carry entire conversations. Finally, Kale spoke. What's left to save, Dr. Chun, is the truth. And perhaps, if we're very fortunate, a future that doesn't repeat the mistakes of the past. The truth, Marcus said bitterly, seems to be that humans are capable of monstrous things when it serves their interests. Some humans, Lyra said gently, but not all. Not you. How can you be so sure? Marcus asked. You barely know me. I know that you risked your life to protect me from armed enemies, Lyra replied. I know that you chose to refuse cooperation with my people's killers even when it meant your own death. And I know something else. She moved closer to him, and Marcus noticed that her silver markings were pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. When you touched me during the surgery, when you helped me from the bed, my markings responded to you in a way they have never responded to any other being. What does that mean? Marcus asked, though something deep in his chest told him he already knew. It means, Kale said with what might have been wonder in his voice, that you carry ethereal genetics in your bloodline. The words seemed to echo in the medical bay as Marcus tried to process their implications. That's impossible. I'm human. I know my family history going back generations. Do you? The female ethereal asked gently. Dr. Chun, what do you know about your maternal grandmother? Marcus frowned, trying to remember. She died when I was young. My mother always said she was ahead of her time, brilliant, but eccentric. She was a scientist of some kind, I think. Her name was Elena Vasquez, Kale said, and Marcus felt the world shift again. She was one of the first human ethereal diplomatic liaisons, and she was my sister's bondmate. Bondmate, the closest equivalent in your language would be wife, Lyra explained. But among my people, bonding creates a connection that goes beyond marriage. It literally joins two beings at a genetic level. You're saying my grandmother was married to an alien? I'm saying your grandmother was bonded to my Aunt Sarah, Kale replied, and that their daughter, your mother, carried both human and ethereal genetic markers. Marcus sat down heavily in the nearest chair, his mind reeling. This is insane. If what you're saying is true, then I'm part alien. You're part ethereal, Lyra corrected. And that's why your touch affects my markings the way it does. That's why you were able to save me when a purely human doctor might not have been able to. Your hybrid nature gave you an intuitive understanding of my physiology. It also, Kale added grimly, makes you one of the most hunted beings in the galaxy. The hegemony has been systematically eliminating anyone with mixed heritage. They consider such beings to be abominations. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring again throughout the ship. But these weren't the same battle alert klaxons from before. These were evacuation warnings. The ship is breaking apart, the third ethereal said, checking some kind of device on his wrist. The damage from the attack was more severe than it appeared. We need to get to the escape pods, Marcus said, his medical training overriding his shock and confusion. No, Kale said firmly. The hegemony will be monitoring for escape pods. Anyone who flees in conventional ships will be hunted down and killed. Then, how do we get off this ship? Kale smiled, and, for the first time, Marcus saw something other than grim determination in the alien's expression. We use unconventional ships. They move quickly through the corridors of the dying Meridian, passing scenes of devastation that made Marcus's heart ache. The hegemony forces had been thorough in their slaughter. Bodies of crew members Marcus had known and worked with for years lay scattered throughout the ship. Why kill everyone? Marcus asked as they navigated around a collapsed bulkhead. If they were looking for Lyra, why not just take her and leave? Because, Lyra replied sadly, the hegemony doesn't take chances. Anyone who might have learned something about their operations, anyone who might have pieced together the truth, had to be eliminated. They reached the main hangar bay to find it filled with wreckage and the acrid smell of burned metal. But in the center of the destruction sat something that took Marcus's breath away. It wasn't large, perhaps the size of a small shuttle, but its design was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The hull seemed to flow like liquid metal, and patterns of light raced across its surface in mesmerizing displays. It was clearly alien technology, but there was something about it that felt familiar, almost welcoming. A Starweaver ship, Lyra breathed. I thought they were all destroyed. Not all, Kale said proudly. This is the Whisper of Stars. She's been hiding in the outer system, waiting for our signal. Hiding how? Marcus asked. Our sensors should have detected any ship that large. The female ethereal laughed, a sound like silver bells. Dr. Chun, this ship is older than your entire civilization. She knows how to hide from primitive sensor technology. As they approached the ship, Marcus could see that it was responding to their presence. The patterns of light grew brighter, and what appeared to be a doorway formed in the flowing hull. She recognizes ethereal genetic markers, Kale explained, including yours, Dr. Chun. You have as much right to board her as any of us. Inside, the ship was even more remarkable. The walls seemed to be alive, pulsing with soft light, and responding to the touch of its passengers. There were no visible controls, no screens or instruments that Marcus could identify. How do you fly this thing? He asked as they settled into what appeared to be acceleration couches that formed themselves from the ship's hull. We don't fly her, Lyra said, placing her hand on what might have been a control surface. We commune with her. Starweaver ships are partially alive, partially conscious. They form bonds with their crews. The ship began to move, and Marcus felt a sensation unlike anything he'd ever experienced. It was as if the vessel was reading his thoughts, understanding his fears and hopes, and responding accordingly. The acceleration was perfectly smooth, with no sensation of force or pressure. Through viewports that appeared in the hull, Marcus watched the Meridian fall away behind them. The great research vessel was breaking apart now, its hull splitting along stress fractures caused by the hegemony attack. Soon there would be nothing left but debris and the scattered dreams of a crew that had believed they were exploring for the betterment of humanity. Where are we going? Marcus asked as they cleared the gravity well of the nearby star. To find the others, Kale replied. To gather what remains of our people and decide what comes next. And what has come next? Marcus pressed. You said there are only 17 ethereals left in the entire galaxy. How do you rebuild a civilization from 17 people? We don't, the female ethereal said quietly. Our civilization is gone, Dr. Chun. What we do now is try to preserve something of what we were, and perhaps plant seeds for something new. Seeds? Lyra said, turning those violet eyes on him. And others like you. The hegemony believes they eliminated all the mixed heritage bloodlines, but they're wrong. There are humans scattered throughout the galaxy who carry ethereal genetics and don't know it. People like me, Marcus said, beginning to understand. People who might be able to access ethereal technology, Kale added. People who might be able to bridge the gap between our species. People who might be able to build something better than what either of our civilizations achieved alone. The ship's walls suddenly blazed with urgent light, and Marcus felt a sensation like ice water in his veins. Through the viewports, he could see ships approaching. Lots of ships. Hegemony fleet, the third ethereal said grimly. They were waiting for us. How many? Kale asked. 47 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts. Marcus felt despair washing over him. After everything they'd been through, after all the revelations and losses, they were going to be captured and killed by the very forces they'd barely escaped. But Lyra was smiling. Dr. Chun, she said, her silver markings blazing with excitement, would you like to see what a Starweaver ship can really do when she's protecting her crew? Before Marcus could answer, the universe exploded into impossible colors around them, and he realized that his understanding of what was possible was about to expand once again. The whisper of stars didn't just move through space. She danced with it, twisted it, made it sing. The approaching hegemony fleet suddenly seemed to be moving through thick syrup while the ethereal ship flowed between them like water through a net. Ow! Marcus gasped, watching dreadnoughts the size of cities fall behind them as if they were standing still. Space-time manipulation, Kale explained casually. Your species understands a theory, but you've never had the biological interface necessary to make it work. The ship responds to ethereal neural patterns. And to yours, Lyra added, placing her hand over Marcus's. Try it. Think about where you want to go. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to clear his mind. Where did he want to go? Home seemed impossible. Earth was apparently under hegemony control. The meridian was gone. His old life was gone. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps what mattered wasn't where they were going, but what they would build when they got there. He thought about the other survivors Kale had mentioned. He thought about humans scattered across the galaxy who didn't know they carried the seeds of something extraordinary. He thought about the possibility of building something new from the ashes of 2 civilizations. The ship responded to his thoughts, and Marcus felt it changing course, heading toward a destination that existed not in space, but in possibility. Behind them, the hegemony fleet fired uselessly at empty space where the whisper of stars had been. Ahead lay the unknown, and for the first time since the nightmare began, Marcus felt something that might have been hope. 3 months had passed since the destruction of the Meridian, and Marcus Chun found himself in a place that shouldn't have existed according to everything he'd once known about the universe. The Haven, as its inhabitants called it, was a massive space station hidden in the gravitational shadow of a collapsed star. Its corridors bustled with beings from dozens of species, all of them refugees from the hegemony's relentless expansion. Marcus stood in the station's medical bay, treating a young Kithran child whose species he'd learned about only weeks ago. The child's triple hearts were beating in a rhythm that would have terrified any human doctor. But Marcus had learned to read the subtle signs that indicated health in non-human physiology. His hybrid nature, the ethereal genetics he'd inherited from his grandmother's bonding, seemed to give him an intuitive understanding of alien biology that amazed even experienced xenophysicians. Her fever is breaking, he told the child's parent, a being that resembled a cross between a spider and a tree. The infection is responding well to the treatment. She should be fully recovered within 2 days. The Kithran's gratitude was expressed through a complex pattern of color changes across its bark-like skin. Marcus had learned to recognize these emotional displays just as he'd learned to communicate with a dozen other species that had found refuge in the haven. Dr. Chun, came a familiar voice from the medical bay's entrance. Marcus turned to see Lyra approaching, and, as always, he felt that strange flutter in his chest that he'd been experiencing more and more frequently. The silver markings on her skin pulsed gently in rhythm with his heartbeat, a phenomenon that had become stronger over the months they'd spent together. "The council is ready for your report," Lyra said, her violet eyes holding warmth that seemed to chase away the constant weight of their situation. Marcus nodded, finishing his notes on the Kithrin child's treatment. The council was what they called the informal leadership group that had emerged among the Haven's refugees. It consisted of representatives from the major species, including the 3 surviving ethereal leaders and Marcus himself, who had somehow become the unofficial spokesperson for displaced humans. They walked together through the station's central corridor, past shops, and gathering places where beings from across the galaxy had created a small pocket of civilization in the darkness. It was remarkable what people could accomplish when they worked together instead of trying to dominate each other. "How many new arrivals today?" Marcus asked as they passed a group of humans who were learning basic galactic trade language from a patient Valerian instructor. 47, Lyra replied. 3 more ships escaped the destruction of the Xerian colony. And, Marcus, there's something else. Something important. What is it? 2 of the new arrivals are human. But not just any humans. They're from the deep cover resistance cells we've been trying to contact. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. For months, they've been sending carefully coded transmissions to rumored resistance groups within human-controlled space. Groups of humans who had learned the truth about their government's alliance with the hegemony and were working to oppose it from within. What did they tell you? "The resistance is larger than we hoped," Lyra said as they entered the council chambers. "Much larger. There are entire worlds where humans have rejected the hegemony alliance. They're fighting back, Marcus. Your people are fighting back." The council chambers were a circular room at the heart of the station, its walls displaying a real-time map of known hegemony positions and recent battle reports. Around the central table sat the beings who had somehow become the leadership of the last free alliance in the galaxy. Kale Starweaver looked up as they entered, his ageless face showing the strain of months spent coordinating refugee operations and resistance activities. Beside him sat Vera Thorne, a human admiral who had defected from the Hegemony Alliance when she learned the truth about their plans for non-compliant human worlds. "Dr. Chun," Admiral Thorne said with a tired smile. "Perfect timing. We've just received some remarkable intelligence from our new arrivals." Marcus took his seat at the table, noting the mix of hope and tension in the room. "What kind of intelligence?" "It turns out," said Zaratul, the Kithrin Council representative, "that the hegemony has been lying to their human allies about the scope of their plans." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. Admiral Thorne activated the room's holographic display, showing a detailed breakdown of hegemony fleet movements. "The humans working with the hegemony believe they're helping to eliminate a dangerous alien threat. They think that once the ethereal terrorist problem is solved, they'll be granted equal status as partners in a galactic alliance." "But that's not what's actually planned," Lyra said grimly. "Not even close," Thorne confirmed. "According to the intelligence our new arrivals brought, the hegemony plans to eliminate humanity entirely once we've served our purpose. They see us as useful tools for now, but ultimately as just another inferior species to be conquered." Marcus felt sick. "How long do we have?" "The final phase of their plan was scheduled to begin in 6 months, Kale said. "Mass deployment of biological weapons specifically designed to target human DNA. Every human world, every human ship, every human colony would be sterilized simultaneously." "Was scheduled." Marcus caught the past tense. "The resistance has been more effective than anyone realized," Thorne said with the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her in weeks. 3 major hegemony research facilities have been destroyed. Their biological weapons program has been set back by at least 2 years. "And there's more," Lyra added, her silver markings pulsing with excitement. The Resistance has discovered something the Hegemony didn't know existed. Something that changes everything. She activated another display, this one showing what appeared to be ancient ruins on a dead world. The architecture was clearly ethereal, but unlike any ethereal construction Marcus had seen before. These ruins were discovered in the Andromax system 3 weeks ago, Kale explained. They're over 50,000 years old, predating the current ethereal civilization by millennia. Our ancestors, Lyra said softly. The original ethereal civilization that we thought was lost forever. What did you find there? Marcus asked, studying the holographic displays. Records, Kale replied. Historical archives that survived the collapse of the first ethereal empire. And in those records, we found something remarkable. The display changed again, showing what appeared to be star charts marking hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Seed worlds, Lyra said. The original ethereals apparently had a policy of establishing genetic archives on worlds throughout the galaxy, living repositories of not just ethereal genetics, but the genetics of every species they encountered. Marcus began to understand the implications. Including humans. Including humans, Kale confirmed. But also including dozens of other species that we thought had been extinct for millennia. The Hegemony hasn't been committing genocide for the past century. They've been committing it for the past 50,000 years. And these seed worlds, most of them are still intact, Admiral Thorne said. Hidden, protected by technology that the Hegemony apparently can't detect or counter. Each one contains enough genetic material to restore entire civilizations. That's incredible, Marcus said. But how does this help us? Even if we can restore extinct species, we still don't have the numbers to fight the Hegemony directly. Actually, came a new voice from the chamber entrance. We might. Marcus turned to see a figure he didn't recognize entering the room. It was clearly human, but there was something about the way they moved that reminded him of Lyra's fluid grace. As the figure came closer, Marcus could see faint silver markings on their skin, barely visible but definitely present. Dr. Chun, Lyra said formally, I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Kim Valdez. She's the leader of the Human Resistance's Science Division. Marcus started at the name. Kim, are you related to? Lieutenant Sarah Kim was my sister, Dr. Kim Valdez said grimly. She was assigned to infiltrate your research vessel as part of a deep cover operation. What she found there convinced her to try to defect, but the Hegemony discovered her plans before she could complete the transition. She died saving our lives, Marcus said quietly. I know, and her sacrifice wasn't in vain. Dr. Kim Valdez moved to the holographic display and input a series of commands. The star chart changed, now showing hundreds of new markers scattered across the galaxy. What am I looking at? Marcus asked. Active resistance cells, she replied. Every marker represents a world or station where humans, or other species, are actively fighting Hegemony control. We've been coordinating for months, sharing intelligence and resources. How many people are we talking about? Conservative estimate? 2 billion beings across 47 star systems. And that's just the organized resistance. There are entire sectors in open revolt. Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since the destruction of the Meridian. Genuine hope for the future. The Hegemony has been so focused on eliminating the last ethereals that they've ignored the growing resistance movement, Admiral Thorne explained. They think they're winning because they've reduced your people to 17 survivors. They have no idea that those 17 survivors have become the nucleus of the largest resistance movement in galactic history. What's the plan? Marcus asked. Kale leaned forward, his ancient eyes burning with determination. We use the seed world technology to restore the species the Hegemony thought they'd eliminated. We coordinate with the resistance cells to launch simultaneous strikes across multiple sectors. And we use the one advantage the Hegemony doesn't know we have. Which is you, Lyra said simply. And people like you. Humans with ethereal genetics who can interface with our technology but appear completely human to Hegemony sensors. Doktor Kimaldez Similet. The Resistance has identified over 300 humans with mixed heritage. Most of them don't know what they are, but with proper training, they could become the most effective infiltrators and saboteurs the galaxy has ever seen. There's something else, Lyra added, her cheeks darkening in what Marcus had learned was the ethereal equivalent of a blush. The bonding that occurred between your grandmother and Kale's aunt wasn't unique. There are records of dozens of similar bonds between humans and ethereals over the past 60 years. Which means, Kale said with something that might have been amusement, that the mixed heritage population is larger than anyone realized. The hegemony may have thought they were eliminating a threat, but they actually helped create their own downfall. Marcus looked around the table at the assembled representatives of a dozen species, all of them united in their determination to oppose tyranny and build something better. 6 months ago, he'd been a simple ship's doctor who thought humanity was alone in the universe. Now he found himself at the center of a galactic resistance movement that could reshape civilization itself. "When do we begin?" he asked. "We already have," Admiral Thorne said. "The first seed world activation began 3 days ago. The Kitharan homeworld, which the hegemony sterilized 5 years ago, is already showing signs of renewed life. And the infiltration operations start next week," Dr. Kim Valdez added. "We have teams ready to insert into hegemony command centers across 12 sectors." "What about the ethereal survivors?" Marcus asked. "What's your role in all this?" Lyra's hand found his across the table, and Marcus felt the familiar warmth of connection that had been growing stronger between them over the months. "Our role is to make sure this never happens again, to help build a galactic civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. And," Kale added with a rare smile, "to ensure that the bond between our species grows stronger instead of being used as weapons of division." As if responding to their conversation, the silver markings on both Lyra's and Marcus's skin began to pulse in perfect synchronization. Around the table, Marcus could see similar reactions from the other mixed heritage individuals present. "Is this normal?" he asked, looking at the gentle light emanating from his arms. "It's unprecedented," Dr. Kim Valdez said with wonder in her voice. "Our preliminary research suggests that extended contact between bonded pairs creates a kind of biological resonance, not just between the individuals, but between their entire genetic lines. Meaning, Lyra said softly, that the children of mixed heritage couples might represent something entirely new. Not human, not ethereal, but something that combines the best characteristics of both species." Marcus felt the weight of possibility settling around him. They were talking about more than just ending a war or defeating an enemy. They were talking about the evolution of consciousness itself. "There's one more thing," Admiral Thorne said, her voice carrying a gravity that made everyone at the table pay attention. "Our intelligence suggests that the hegemony has been planning something beyond just the elimination of humans and ethereals. They've been systematically destroying archaeological sites across the galaxy, wiping out any trace of civilizations that predate their own." "Why?" Marcus asked. "Because," Kale said grimly, "there are records indicating that the hegemony itself isn't the original species. They're conquerors who eliminated their own creators millennia ago and took their place." Which means, Dr. Kim Valdez continued, that everything they've told their human allies about bringing order to a chaotic galaxy is a lie. They're not trying to create peace. They're trying to eliminate any evidence of alternatives to their totalitarian model. Marcus looked around the table at beings from species that represented millions of years of evolution, art, science, and culture. The idea that all of this diversity and beauty could be erased to serve the ambitions of a single totalitarian empire filled him with a determination he'd never felt before. "Then we stop them," he said simply. "All of them. And we make sure that what we build afterward is worthy of what we're fighting to preserve." Lyra's hand squeezed his, and in that moment Marcus felt not just the connection between them, but the connections that linked every being in the room, every refugee on the station, every resistance fighter across the galaxy. They were no longer separate species struggling for survival. They were becoming something new, a true galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. As the council meeting concluded and the representatives dispersed to begin their preparations, Marcus found himself alone with Lyra in the observation deck that looked out onto the hidden star where the Haven orbited. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. "I'm terrified," Marcus admitted, "but I'm also more hopeful than I've ever been. 6 months ago, I thought healing one patient at a time was the limit of what I could accomplish. Now you're helping to heal an entire galaxy," Lyra finished. "And, Marcus, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" "The bonding between us isn't just emotional anymore. It's becoming biological, genetic. If we continue on this path, if we formalize the connection, our children won't just be mixed heritage. They'll be the first of an entirely new species." Marcus looked at her, at this remarkable being who had taught him that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than he'd ever imagined. The thought of building a future together, of creating something new from the ashes of two ancient civilizations, filled him with a joy that seemed to make the very stars sing. "Then let's build that future," he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Outside the viewport, the hidden star pulsed with gentle light, and across the galaxy, the seeds of a new civilization began to grow in the darkness between the stars.